Welcome to How to Fail, the podcast that believes, as Truman Capote did, that failure is the condiment that gives success its flavour. Before we get to our guest, I wanted to mention our subscriber podcast, Failing with Friends, where my guest and I answer your questions and offer advice on some of your failures too. Here's some from Sharon Horgan.
I'm good friends with an ex currently, and it's really lovely. And I never thought I would be that person.
Do join in by following the link in the podcast notes, and you can send me an email or look out for my call-outs once a month on Instagram for quick-fire questions. Thank you so much. In her own words, Sharon Horgan is a late starter. After a childhood spent in Ireland, attending a convent school she hated and helping out on her parents' turkey farm in the holidays, Horgan dropped out of art college and worked in a job centre through her 20s, before deciding to go to university aged 27 to study English. In her early 30s and single, Horgan lived in a flat share in London, experiences that informed Pulling, a sitcom she co-wrote with Dennis Kelly, which won a cult following and a BAFTA nomination. In her 40s, she wrote and starred in the hit show Catastrophe and co-created the TV series Motherland. But it was Bad Sisters, created in her 50s, that sent Horgan's career stratospheric. The dark comedy about 5 siblings brought together by a determination to save their sister from the clutches of her abusive husband won a Peabody Award, 4 Emmy nominations, and a 100% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Season 2 premiered last November. Still only 54, you have to wonder... No, I meant that genuinely, because it's very young. Still only 54, you have to wonder if Horgan's early experiences of not quite finding her place in the world have shaped her uncanny ability to craft complex, compelling, and heartfelt characters who find comedy even in the darkest situations. As she puts it, I didn't want to be insignificant, so I made people laugh. Young Sharon Horgan, whippersnapper.
That was so funny.
Welcome to How to Fail.
Just a baby of 54.
I do mean that, though.
Such a weird number. It feels so weird saying it.
I can imagine it feels weird, but I did mean that because of how much you've created.
Yeah.
How many hit shows you've got under your belt. You're something of a workaholic, aren't you?
I suppose. I think so.
Does work make you happy?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely does. I mean, it's sometimes chaotic. Like this morning when I got out of the bath, Holly Walsh, we're making this new series called Amandaland, which is a spin-off of Motherland, texted me and said, where are your notes for episode 6? So I was like doing my notes for episode 6 on the way over here. When I finish here, I go and have a meeting with a new young writer, and it's sometimes too much. And, you know, I've just come off the press tour for Bad Sisters and I should just be lying down. But I was doing the notes on the way over here and really enjoying it. Like, it gives me a buzz. And I know that even though I'm stressing about going to meet this new young writer, it'll be great and I'll enjoy it, because that's the kind of thing that gets me really excited, you know. But I don't know. I enjoy it so much that it kind of feels like sometimes just leisure.
I feel the same. And I think actually I don't really agree with the term workaholic, and I'm trying to reclaim the idea of busy.
Right.
Because actually I really lean into that, and I love work. There are evenings that I would rather be working than seeing anyone else.
Totally agree.
Yeah. But you're not allowed to say that.
No, it seems weird, doesn't it?
That idea of wanting to make people laugh to prove your significance. What was the first time you can remember being really proud that you'd made someone laugh?
It was my mother, and I completely remember it. She has a great sense of humor, and so did my dad. But, you know, she wasn't like a big laugher. You know, she wouldn't sort of roll over and belly laugh. But we had these, do you remember those masks you used to get at Halloween? There's like a little piece of elastic. And so anyway, I put on this cat mask and I just made like a cat, just trying to, you know, be physically funny for her. And she rolled over like proper belly laughing. Whatever it was, I was just being a clown for her. So that really stuck in my head, because when you're one of five, you kind of need to find your thing. You either have to be, I don't know, the very responsible one, or the very caring one, or the one who's great at sports, or, So I guess I was the second eldest. So it was kind of, I guess, hard to find your thing that made you stand out. So for me, it was just making them laugh.
So playing Eva in Bad Sisters, who is the eldest and has a very maternal relationship with her younger sisters. She's the one who takes care of them, who gets shit done, who's there as an aunt, which I really valued seeing on screen. Thank you, because she doesn't have her own children. And so actually there was something so meaningful about that for me to watch. Was that wish fulfillment for you?
Well, it was in a way, because I really loved the idea of playing someone who was a good person and a non-selfish person. And I mean, I never sort of thought this, but especially my eldest daughter, she tells me that I always play assholes. And I guess what I generally play are women who can be selfish and can be flawed and that kind of thing, and make bad choices. And that's fine. Like, I love them for it. And there's loads of me in all of those women. And so there's less of me in Eva, I think. And I put a lot of my older sister into her. And in fact, my sister did end up becoming a mum. She met and fell in love with someone quite late in her life, but she had gotten to a point where she wasn't going to have kids and was kind of was making herself okay with that. And I mean, there's loads of people who I think probably it's a good thing for them not to have kids. It's not right for them. But I knew for her, she was kind of a born mother, and I felt like it was really important that happened for her. So with Eva, I kind of using that part of my sister, that if she hadn't had a kid, she would have still been this incredible maternal matriarch kind of person, so important in all of our lives. I mean, my eldest sister is godmother to my youngest brother, such an Irish thing. But yeah, just someone, I liked her being someone who had made peace with it and continued to sort of mother in other ways,
It's one of the things that has always struck me about your work, that even when you write or play mothers, it's not excluding in any way. And maybe that's because you have this experience of knowing what your older sister went through, but it's a very rare quality. And I'm not quite sure how you do it, but it's really beautifully done. And you also show different ways of parenting. And I just wanted to thank you for that. As someone who doesn't have children and who has tried and failed, but knows that there are other ways to mother, it's really refreshing to see that on screen.
Oh,
truly. Thank you. Talking of your youngest brother, Mark. He said this thing you did relative values in the Sunday Times.
Oh, yeah.
And he said this thing, and it was a very loving piece, obviously, but he calls you a hard nut to crack. He said that when you first met his partner, it was huge hugs for him, and Saoirse went in for one too, but Sharon put her hand out to shake it. Where is that? Is that shyness?
Yeah, I think it is, actually. I think it's a weird mixture. Definitely started out as shyness. And then I think when I started doing this job and, making TV and being a bit sort of front facing, there was that a sort of awkwardness that came with, walking into a room and what people expected you to be versus who you actually are. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I suppose I did sort of put on a bit of a front. And so I think it's a weird kind of mixture now. It's like half of it is like a self-preservation thing and half of it is shyness. And then when I warm up, it's all good.
Bad Sisters does this very clever thing of treading a line between sadness and comedy, which again is a recurring theme in so much of your work. How do you know that you've got that right? Do you sometimes think in the writer's room, oh, this is too dark?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, Rob and I used to
Delaney.
Yeah, Rob Delaney, who I made Catastrophe with. Definitely the same with Bad Sisters, like writing about an abusive relationship and like where you sort of, where and when you straddle the comedy, when you use it, when you avoid it, how you know, how long you go without getting a laugh, how quickly you can have a joke directly after something terrible happening, which I feel like is a tricky thing to get right. But in life, it's almost immediate, you know? I mean, you never really stop using humor as a, you know, as a defense mechanism or as a tool or as relief. It's just like relief, isn't it? To sort of laugh after something terrible has happened.
Well, a thank you on behalf of everyone who's seen themselves represented on screen through your work. I think it's a very powerful thing. Let's get on to your first failure, however. Enough of the success.
Yeah.
Your first failure is art college / drama school. So tell us about this and why you picked it.
I found it really hard to do this, by the way.
But that's always so lovely in a way for me to hear, because it means that you know the podcast. Yeah. I know that you've really thought about it. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I chose it because it did really feel like my first failure was art college, because I dropped out and like I didn't even see it through the first year. And at the time it was so important to get in, and it took so much effort, and plenty of places had turned me down. But eventually I got into the College of Marketing and Design in Dublin, and I felt so out of my depth from the off. I probably shouldn't have got in. I think I was sort of a late admission, so someone had sort of dropped out and there was a place, so I got in. And immediately I was aware that it was not for me. There was so many talented artists there. So I was in like, you know, I was the worst in the class, and I couldn't deal with it. I found it really hard. And I'd moved to Dublin, and I moved into an apartment with two girls who were lovely, but I didn't really know them that well. And I'd saved up. I'd worked in the summer working in as a chambermaid in London, and in a few pubs in the evenings.
You've had so many odd jobs. I didn't even know about the chambermaid.
Oh yeah.
I knew about the head shop in Camden.
Yeah. Chambermaid and barmaid in the evenings.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted.
In the city as well. Being a barmaid in a pub in the city is not for the faint-hearted. Yeah, so I'd saved up all this money and you know, starting out in this new adventure, new flat, going to art college. And I kind of knew as soon as I was there, I wasn't sure I was gonna like make it through. So I was doing this is like the beginning of my kind of workaholic kind of nature, that I was doing I'd got into this drama school at the weekends. So I was doing art college all week and then doing drama at the weekends. And it all just sort of, I don't know, I think it was also, you know, you're 19 and you know, it's such a difficult time, isn't it? I don't know if you remember being 19, but it's a really tricky time. It just built up, and I kind of lost my marbles a bit. I got really depressed. Yeah, I just started taking antidepressants, which is really, you know, I didn't know anyone who was doing that at the time. It was kind of not something people really spoke about. But I remember my mum just being like really worried and taking me to see a psychiatrist, and got me on some antidepressants, and I just dropped out. And I thought the only way I could get around that was just leave the country. Like, you know, this weird thing of like, if I just leave, no one's going to sort of notice that I've failed. So I went to London and yeah, just got a job and a job.
I'm so sorry you went through that, because it sounds so lonely. And I wonder if there was part of it for you, having grown up as one of 5 with this incredibly tight and loving family unit, that felt at sea being apart from them.
I don't know, because my sister was at Trinity College, and she lived in Dublin at the time. And, you know, but I think it's just, you get separated from your friends for the most part, don't you? You're like, usually you don't end up going to the same college as your besties. So they're all sort of scattered in Belfast and Huddersfield and, going to these different unis. And so it was like starting over without those friendships as well. And I think it's just really tricky to feel like you're failing at something. I think it's really tricky to be in a situation where you feel like there was a mistake made and you shouldn't be there. And then on top of that, it's just really difficult being a teenager.
Yes. And you mentioned that your mother was worried about you. So did you speak to your parents about it?
Not really. I mean, they sort of know. I remember I came out of my coffee shop job and they were parked in whatever Toyota they were driving at the time. They were parked out the front and they never came up to Dublin. But it was kind of like a sort of intervention kind of thing. Yeah, it was just a very tricky, weird time.
Yeah, and I can feel it still now, you talking about it. It sounds scary.
It's weird because I haven't thought about it in so long. When I went to London, I just thought, well, I'll do the drama school thing properly and do that. And then I'll, prove myself and all that other stuff won't matter. But I applied to every drama school in London and went to all of them and auditioned and didn't get in. So I think that was the thing that sort of floored me a bit. I think that's why I sort of ended up working in a job centre for 6 years.
Yeah. And how did you feel being told at that stage, oh, your dream is not for you? How did that feel?
Well, I think the weird thing is that I probably just thought it was a dream anyway. I probably didn't think it was a real thing that I could ever do. So it probably made some sort of weird sense, and my reaction to it was to, not go back to Ireland for 2 years. It seems so weird now. For 2 years, not even for Christmases, I was so oh, I'll just, stay here and maybe no one will notice. I was also sort of plotting, I was also trying to figure out how I could turn it all around, so that I could go back with some kind of pride. And it was actually my older sister who came to the rescue because she knew that I'd started writing. She put me in touch with a producer that she'd started making documentaries and, so she's sort of had a few sort of contacts and inroads and stuff. And so she put me in touch with someone who was connected to comedy at the BBC. And then I got in touch with them. And that's sort of what got the ball rolling a bit.
And you went back home for Christmas?
Yeah. We see at that stage, my little brother had started playing rugby for Ireland, and having this sort of high achieving family was amazing, but also sort of shone a light on me and my squat in London working in the job centre. I was kind of a bit ashamed. I mean, that really drove me. And then sort of reconnecting with Dennis Kelly and, when we started writing together and filming stuff and, we started actively sort of being creative. He was also, by the way, in shared accommodation doing a job he hated. Kind of that's how Pulling came about, because we were both in these very unsatisfactory situations across the board, bad relationships, not great housing situation, and jobs we hated. But that's we figured a lot of people would relate to that because a lot of people come to London to find their thing, and sometimes you just get a bit lost in it, And the way we sort of described it was, you're in one of the greatest cities in the world, but you're in the shittest part with no funds to get to the good bit. I feel like if I'd had success very early, it would have been a completely different journey for me. Everything that happened went into the writing, and whatever it is, this sort of dark way of looking at the world, but also finding it funny, sort of informs everything I do, so really grateful, all that.
It's so true that it informs everything you do. And it's also kind of uncanny how your writing then tends to reflect what happens in your life.
Yeah.
So Pulling, and then Catastrophe, which was loosely based on you getting pregnant within 6 months of meeting your ex-husband,
Yeah.
and Motherland, your experiences at the school gates, and then divorce. We'll come on to that, your show with Sarah Jessica Parker. And I know that when you were filming season 2 of Bad Sisters, your dad died.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry, because he sounds like an amazing person.
Yeah.
And so much of season 2, from what I've seen of it, is about grief.
Yeah.
Did you find that helpful or difficult, or both?
Definitely both. My little brother Mark, he sent me a text the other day because he just watched episode 5, and in episode 5, it's kind of Eva's story and how she's dealing with her grief. And then we have this sort of karaoke scene where all the sisters get together and they think about Grace and they sing the song. Like, all of that was filmed after Dad died. And Marky said, that he loved the episode, but he found it really difficult to watch. And I was saying, well, because everything I was feeling went into those scenes, so in some ways it's great and it's cathartic and you can connect with your feelings and you can express them. But in other ways it feels so weird because essentially you're kind of using your emotions and it feels like strange and a bit like wrong. But I remember trying to explain this to someone, but when I was at my dad's funeral, I had this weird like sort of muscle memory that I'd sort of done it before. But you do when you're an actor, you're it's such a weird job. You're experiencing. I mean, you're playing heartache, grief, all these sort of anger, extreme emotions, and you're sort of living them in that moment. You're putting your body under this incredible sort of strain, and that's what I was feeling at the funeral. I was like sat with an actor playing my dad dying, before, and it was really blew my mind. I was like, this can be a bit unhealthy, this job. It was weird going back to work. In the end, we had to shut down the production because I couldn't. I'm going to get upset. I think I have to go.
Sharon,
sorry.
There's tissues there.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a psycho thing to say, that
No,
you've done this
so
before?
Deep.
But I guess just being together is such a huge part of it, of the healing is just being together. Myself and Shane and Lorraine, after Dad died, they're my 2 brothers and sisters that are in London. We would just go and find these, whatever shitty pub we thought my dad might really like, and just go to that pub and sort of drink some Guinness and talk about him and then just get on with our lives. And it was the most intense, awful thing. But, we all got to be with him. We all were there, like all the family and all our partners and kids. And, so we had, like a beautiful goodbye.
I'm so sorry. And I think what you said there about being together, being the healing, is profoundly beautiful. Your second failure is an audition that you did for Jim Sheridan's The Field.
Yeah.
a movie that came out in 1990. So what stage are you at now in your career? Are you living in Camden?
No.
It
was just before I left. It was just after that whole art college debacle. So I had this kind of wild boyfriend when I was 18. He got a car and a bunch of us were sort of driving around Dublin being lunatics. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But he was kind of wild and a risk taker, and he so this it's terrible to tell this.
I'm already in love with this story. I don't know. It's already taken a tangent.
so it was a bunch of us in the back of the car, and he was doing this sort of Russian roulette thing where he would drive, like there was this crossroads, and he would like drive straight across without stopping, and to get the buzz of getting through without crashing or any cars coming along. It was really, actually really, really frightening, but he did it. And we had such a relief. You know, I remember just being in the car and just thinking, shit, we're still alive. That was insane. And we were all like sort of whooping. And then he lost control of the car immediately after that and hit a wall, and the car was accordioned, whatever you call that. It was destroyed. And somehow we all got out of it relatively unscathed, except my arm was like entirely bruised. The whole thing was like the most glorious bruise you've ever seen. So I was sitting in I was a bit of a hippie at the time, like kind of a bit grungy, bit hippie. And I had this huge bruise on my arm, and I was sitting in this coffee shop in Dublin, sort of trying to figure out how I could not go back to class. And then Jim Sheridan was in that coffee shop, and he came up to me and he said, I'm making this film. Would you come in and audition? So it was for this gypsy girl who was like sort of the female lead, but it was still like, it was like Richard Harris and John Hurt, like an amazing cast. So I guess I look kind of a bit like, you know, a wild gypsy. And I'd thought about it, you know, but it was very much in the distance, sort of like a dream. And I couldn't believe that I was, you know, being given this opportunity. And so I completely overthought it. I'd never done an audition before. I was absolutely terrified. But he gave me the number of his producer, who was like Noel Pearson, I think. And I don't know. I mean, maybe he went up to girls all the time in coffee shops and offered them auditions. But I just kept calling this number. I was like, and the more I couldn't kind of get through or get hold of anyone, the more I was like, no, I'm gonna do this thing. So anyway, finally I got hold of them, and they send me the pages, and I turn up for the audition, and I did it, and it went terribly. But I walked out of the audition. I was like, yeah, I want to do that.
What an extraordinary thing to happen.
Yeah, it was wild. What weird things like that happened to me all the time when I was in Dublin. It was so bizarre.
You're a bit of a witch.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
The fact that audition went badly, did that make you sort of knew you wanted to do it, but did it also sow the seed of wanting to write your own material so you wouldn't have to audition?
No, not that. I mean, I'd already started writing a little bit here and there, but not taking it too seriously. I'm kind of like this even now. When something goes badly, I'm immediately like, right, I need to fix that. Like, I need to get better at that thing. And for me, never to be in that situation again, never to feel that sort of at my depth. It makes sense to me now that I had that feeling off the back of it, you know. And I think because of art college not working out and wanting to get away, I kind of thought, well, maybe this is it. Like, I go to London, and that's when I tried to get into all the drama schools and stuff.
Do you feel you have proved yourself now to yourself when you look at your body of work?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a weird question to be asked now, because if you'd asked me it even a couple of years ago, and that's with a lot of shows under my belt and, you know, a successful production company, and no reason to feel like I've, you know, an imposter. But it really is very, very recent that I've sort of allowed myself to feel like I know what I'm doing. You know, there's a confidence there that I really appreciate, actually, because it's not great to be walking around feeling like you've sort of snuck in and, well, no one's noticed so far that I'm sort of winging it. It's exhausting. It's much better to feel like you should be in those rooms, and, you know.
What's been behind that shift? Is that just time?
I think it's like a body of work building up.
Yeah.
And affirmations, I guess, from people I admire. And I suppose like the people I've ended up sort of working with, and as bad sisters, really, you know, it was sort of getting that felt like quite a massive thing, and then pulling it off. You know, us as a company had never made anything of that sort of size.
And this is your production company, Merman, which we haven't even mentioned, which is a hugely successful production company that you co-founded in 2014.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, you know, it was a big confidence boost for us as a company, and then for me personally, you know. And yeah, I guess it's just that feeling of, you know, even when I'm working on other people's projects, and I've kind of found a really good balance of what I get very involved in. I feel like I know I can be additive, you know, I know what I'm doing in each of those situations. And yeah, it's much more relaxing than worrying all the time.
I love hearing that. I love hearing
the worry
it.
is still there. I mean, it's still
yeah.
like when I start a new project, the fear and adrenaline is still there with that. But I think it would be so weird for that not to be there. And I'm not sure how much I'd benefit from that. You know, you got to feel like you're learning all the time. You have to be open to continue to learn, otherwise I don't know, otherwise you're a monster. You know, I don't know that that's what I'd ever want to be. Like, I'm absolutely definite that, you know, I know it all and I'll have the last say. I don't think I'll ever be that person. I always really need input and other great creative people around me.
Definitely. That means you're not Donald Trump, so
yeah. Or
hooray to that.
Yeah.
Your third failure is your marriage.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a fun one to throw in there.
Well, we were chatting before we started recording about the fact that we're both divorced, and there is something, I think, radically important about people who are willing to say, my relationship was not a failure just because it ended.
Yeah,
but it did feel like a failure.
Yes.
So talk to us about what, because you were together with your ex for many years. You have 2 wonderful daughters.
Yeah.
And just talk me through the course of that relationship and how you both decided that it was the end.
Well, I mean, I guess it was one of those things that was a long time coming. And I feel like it's weirdly connected to confidence as well. Or also that thing of what you should do versus, you know, what your body tells you and your brain tells you ought to do. But it's like the catastrophe story. You kind of we got together, we had a baby, you know, and we made it work for a long time, and we had another baby, and you know, he was involved in the business. But there came a point where it was so clear that it wasn't right for either of us. And it kind of, I guess, you know, I don't know whether it's being slightly bit Catholic, some of that stuff still being in me, was just that idea of not getting divorced, or like, you don't get divorced. You just kind of, I remember talking to Rob about it. We're like, you know, our partners have to do something so heinous. Like, just stay in it. It's so much harder to go through all that, you know, to go through a divorce. And listen, it's true. And weirdly, when I was making Divorce, the show, I hadn't gone through it. So I was kind of, you know, using other people's experiences and the idea that anyone who's been married knows what it's like to want a divorce. But I had no idea. It's an odd one, because I've never been happier, but I'm still angry at myself for not really for the failure of the marriage, but for not figuring it out earlier. It's so destructive, I think. And I mean, you know, you get one life, and that's an awful lot of time to spend on something that's not working. And I don't know what kind of conditioning it is that sort of got so in the way of what my instinct was and what would have been good, you know, for everyone. So it's a weird one, because yes, it failed, but it was had such a positive impact on my life. I think the stuff that's less fun is the business of divorce. It's debilitating, time consuming, money drain. You know, it's not fun for anyone.
And how do you find it being a parent in the wake of your divorce? Because that was something that I never had to deal with. I didn't have children with my ex, and I often think that would be the stakes are so much higher.
Yeah.
So how is it being a co-parent?
Oh, there's no co-parenting. It's just me. It's just me. It was more sort of like how it impacted when we sort of told the girls. And like, I have this recurring image of my youngest daughter on her own crying. Like when she was crying with us, I think that's, we were able to talk it out and explain how it was going to be. But sort of seeing she left and went into another room, and that was like, that's going to stay with me forever. But 3 hours later, we were out shopping, and, life goes on, and they're so resilient. Kids are amazing. How they weather storms is incredible. I think what I'd sort of lost sight of was how important it is for them to see a working relationship, like a healthy working relationship. And I'd sort of got things out of order, I think. In my head, it was like, like be a family, because that's what you should be. And really, it's not. A family can be any sort of shape and size, and it's much, much better for them to see me happy and to be in a healthy environment. But they're great. They, we're quite open as family, and we talk it all out, and we laugh about things, and we just get on with it, and also park it as well, as much as possible, because it's important that doesn't sort of overshadow anything. It's just that it is what it is.
I don't know if you'll relate to this at all, but I'm sometimes asked about how you know that your relationship is over, like how you get to a point where you can dismantle this institution that seems to carry so much social expectation on it. And I felt that it took me a while to work out that I knew. And then one day it was like my body took over. It was just like the instinct just kicked in.
Yeah.
And it wasn't logic. It wasn't head thinking through everything.
Right.
I just knew that it had to end. Was there a point that you felt like, oh no, this has to?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I'm sure we both thought about it for ages and had those conversations. We had those conversations for ages, but absolutely that. Yeah. There was a point, and then from that point on, there was no going back.
Clarity.
Yeah. And it's such a massive move to make, that you do need that clarity in order to move forward with it. I kind of had an inkling that it was just going to take over for years, and it did. And you need full on clarity that it's the right thing to do.
I'm very struck by what you said at the beginning of this failure, which is that you feel angry at yourself for not having called it sooner.
Yeah.
Right. That's being very harsh on yourself.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Do you think that's the convent school upbringing as well?
Yeah, I think I for a generally kind of happy person, I'm really good at dwelling on the wrong thing, So instead of the positives, I look back, and I'm a bit of a if only kind of person. No, I mean, I suppose it is being harsh, but I feel like I deserve it.
Sharon.
Yeah. What an idiot.
What? You're doing it again. Not an idiot. Like a lovable, flawed human.
Yeah.
Who deserves compassion like all of the rest of us.
Yeah, I guess
and
that
you
as
have,
well.
And you have your two amazing daughters.
Oh, no, I mean, that's obviously.
You don't have to tell me anything about it, but I just want to know if you're seeing someone romantically.
Oh, yeah, I am.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, you can tell me stuff about it if you'd like.
No, that's okay.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
It's been such a delight to talk to you.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you, sometimes I think this is the most boring question, but with you, I don't think it is boring, but it's about what you're going to work on next. And the reason I don't think it's boring for you is because you have this history of predicting your own life.
Yeah.
Or predicting what's in the cultural zeitgeist almost before it happens. So what's percolating at the moment in Horgan's brain?
Well, I mean, it's sort of very beginning stages, but it is this stage of life because I'm building a show around that, because it's an amazing time in life, but it's also the most difficult. And I feel like anytime I've sort of written about, a place and time in my own life, and it's like a kicking off point. It's an inspiration. It's not, completely autobiographical, but I feel like it's a really good driver. And, I feel like I've got something to say about what it is to be a woman of my age in this particular situation. Like I love writing about relationships. It's my most favorite thing. I think they're so delicate and intricate and fun things to observe and write about. So, I mean, there's so many other things that I'm working on that are, Merman things, and I could give you much more solid answers of things that are going to be on the telly. But like, that's the thing that's percolating in my brain the most.
Why don't you write a show about you being a billionaire and then see if that comes true?
It's a great idea.
There you go. Have that for free.
I think we've got enough billionaires though. We've got enough billionaire shit
Not enough
out there.
female ones.
That's true.
Yeah. Just talk to me quickly about your 50s. Still only 54.
Yeah, just the tender age.
The tender age.
Yeah.
What have they represented to you? Because obviously Bad Sisters and that feeling of confidence, that's part of your 50s. So just throw out a few words. What are your 50s like?
Wow. I mean, they're definitely exciting and way more exciting than I thought they'd be. And that the whole confidence thing is definitely something I didn't have in my 40s, which is weird because there's so many things that I like genuinely and vainly get frustrated about. Like I hate when my knees hurt. Like I hate when I don't have, I mean, I've got so much energy. It's weird. I think I think hormones are driving me, I'm on everything.
Great.
So
you look great on it.
But I hate the visual representation of aging. It really bothers me because because of natural vanity, but also because I don't feel like that, and I'm sure everyone says this, but that's why the number feels weird, because inside I'm just like, I have like puppy dog levels of energy. So it's kind of scary. I would say scary as well. There's a weird connection with your mortality when you lose a parent as well. And you start thinking about things in a different way. And that's why I'm very kind of particular about what I work on and who I work with and how I spend my time. I don't know, excited, choosy, scared. There's a few good words. And energized, yeah.
Thank you. I can't wait for my Horgan-esque 50s. Thank you so much for coming on How to Fail.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for all that you do for women in particular and reflecting our experiences on screen. Thank you so much, Sharon Horgan.
Well, I don't feel like I deserve those thanks, but you're welcome.
Please follow How to Fail to get new episodes as they land on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please tell all your friends. This is an Elizabeth Day and Sony Music Entertainment original podcast. Thank you so much for listening.